Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward topic and some cautionary tales. Let's do it. At what point did you stop and think to yourself, I'm in danger? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. In Iraq in 2004, my unit was tasked with pushing from Hit to Fallujah in order to find and destroy Muqtada al-Sadr Mahdi's army. In one of the cities we cleared, we were about to assault a 5-story building that Intel had informed us was defended by more than 100 insurgents. We were stacked up outside a medium-high wall that surrounded the building, and I was carrying my SAW 20-pound machine gun. I got a boost over the wall and immediately fell into and got stuck in a thorny bush. I remember thinking, oh man, what a stupid way to die, as I waited to start getting shot at. Turns out that this insurgent stronghold was actually a school with 2 friendly dudes in it. TL, DR, Intel sucks. About 19,000 feet, 5.7 kilometers up in Tanzania. Felt incredibly drowsy while taking a rest and started dreaming. Guide slapped me on the arm. Don't sleep, you die. The chuckle and I'm in danger came when I realized I felt so awful I might choose sleep. A homeless girl grabbed me from a bar and said she needed an ambulance because her friend had OD'd. I followed her and started phoning one. She led me into an abandoned building. All that was going through my mind was, someone needs help. When she led me to some stairs and said we need to go up them, my brain finally kicked in and realized they could easily be a trap. Even if it wasn't, I was about to walk into a crack den and was far enough into the building where escape wasn't easy. Luckily, my friend had followed us in and appeared, so I phoned the ambulance and we left. I leaned over a candle and set my t-shirt on fire. I thought it was really interesting and turned to my friend saying, "Hey, look everyone, my t-shirt's on fire." Fortunately, one of them had more presence of mind than I did and put it out. When a car jumped the median and was barreling right towards me doing well over 70, luckily horsepower saved me from death. My first instinct was to floor it, at least have them hit the rear door or panels instead of the driver's side door. I was the only one in the car. When I was 7, I was playfully pushing a sheep and he pushed forward. Next thing I know, I'm against a wall, sheep head on my chest, and 5 seconds later, I realized he's too strong for me. I literally thought I was going to die right there. A crackhead got out of prison and went to visit his girlfriend. She moved out about 2 years earlier and I moved in. So at 1 a.m., there's a clearly drunk and high nut job trying to break down my front door while my wife and kids are asleep somehow. I hadn't put the bolts on the door yet, as I was only just on my way to bed when he turned up. It was kind of funny, but I still got the cricket bat out just in case. There was this time on a school bus we had a new driver. The area is pretty hilly, and in this route had a steep 50-foot drop-off where the bus turned around with a 3-point turn. But the bus driver kept backing up closer and closer. We almost went off the cliff. I'm sure that if we measured, it was within a foot. I started looking at exits, how fast I could run to the front or the side exit, and we were all screaming in terror. Good times. I took an out-of-bounds ski trail that looked fun by myself because intelligence is my strong suit. Came upon a tall cliff with a flat landing that I knew I couldn't make on skis, but I'd come too far to hike back to the main path. Took my skis off, tossed them over, and climbed down. Hurt my legs, but nothing serious. Continued on. Several minutes later, came upon a sign pointing toward a 20-kilometer bike trail ending God knows where. It was around that time I realized I could end up lost in the backcountry of a ski resort with no cell reception. Decided to hike in the opposite direction the sign was pointing since it was uphill and seemed more likely to take me back to the main trail. After several whispered swears and a good half-hour of hiking uphill and across a sketchy-looking wooden bridge, through deep snow and ski boots holding my skis, I arrived at a populated ski run. I now make sure to have someone with me for all backcountry-related adventures. That way if I die, I can bring them down with me. Yeah, listen, from somebody who has heard the call of the wild and that the woods are calling, it's always nice to explore a new trail, but really consider what resources you have available, what time it is, and if you really can handle all that. Tempting that it is, it could be pretty dangerous, so glad you made it out okay. I was doing aid work in Croatia in the late 90s, only a few years after the war had ended. Our group was staying in a small village about an hour outside of Zagreb, which had been caught up in the conflicts. Lots of shelled houses, mines in the countryside. Even the main bridge had been blown up, so residents had to use an army makeshift bridge if they wanted to cross the river. We'd make friends with the locals, and they took us down to the river where we had a fun time swimming and mucking about. I totally underestimated the river current and my ability to swim. So I start trying to cross the river, and the current just picks me up, whoosh, and suddenly I'm on my arse, trying to swim against it. No deal. When I realized this, I started swimming to get a footing, but I'm being swept downstream, and my feet are literally hitting rocks, no grip at all. It seemed like forever, but was probably about 5 to 10 seconds. I hit a shallow calm patch of the river where I could stand up. When the guys came over, they were telling me it was no big deal, but had I been swept a little bit further downstream, I would have hit a heavily mined area and probably been blown to bits. I metaphorically shit myself. That's the closest I've come to losing my life. Really shit me up. I worked as an animator in a hotel. During the season, the mini club, Daycare, is filled with kids, but post-season, there's not even one kid in the hotel. So post-season, one older lady and one middle-aged guy entered the empty daycare. The lady quickly explained to me that this guy is her mentally disabled son, who's mentally around 3 to 4 years old. He saw the daycare and really wanted to play there. Usually I wouldn't accept, but there were no kids around, so I was actually happy that I'll be occupied for a while. He was really endearing, and we often watched Mickey Mouse DVDs since he was a big fan. After a few days of me hanging out with him, his mother came to pick him up and asking me how he was. I replied that he was nice as always, to which she replied, good, because he can get very violent and aggressive sometimes. It sent chills down my spine, realizing that I was lucky, but that also he'll be coming to the mini club for the rest of their vacation. So there I was, day after day, playing with this dude, big as twice as me, completely alone, doing everything he wanted and being more than careful, just that he doesn't get mad. When I decided to explore some lava tubes on an extinct volcano, Toto if you're curious, with no torch and bad footwear, it was extremely dark in there with no cell phone reception. I got completely disoriented and had to feel my way out because my phone was not as bright as I'd thought. No one knew where I was, and I could have been in serious trouble. Stupidest thing I've done recently. Me and my good friend Felix, both German, were traveling with an Intro ticket through Europe. In Serbia, we were in a train which was going really slow and stopping at every really little town or village. For some reason, the train got shorter and shorter every other station because they were uncoupling a wagon here and there. So everyone moved to the first 2 wagons because they were most likely to arrive at the final destination. Me and Felix have already been in the first wagon in a closed cabin where there's a bench on the left and the right. We were both sitting left having a cigarette when suddenly things went intense. 3 obviously drunken men came in that cabin. At first they only asked for a cigarette, which we gave them, but after a few minutes they started discussing more and more intense. I could feel that they were talking about us, so I asked Felix, whose father is Serbian, if he would understand them. He was pretty serious at the moment and told me that 2 of them wanted to rob us now and one wanted to wait until the train ride ended. Felix gave me continuous updates about what they were talking about. They were guessing how much money we might have and still discussing what to do with the robbery. Their discussion heated up at one point and then stopped completely. I was wondering what happened and then suddenly it all went black. We were in an effing tunnel. I was totally flexed and expected to get the shit beaten out of me. They were only talking like 3 sentences. I asked Felix, are they going to do it now? He said, I'm not sure. After what felt like 10 but probably was 2 minutes, the light came back and I was sitting there like effing Jackie Chan on my bench, prepared to fight back in the dark. They knew now that we kind of knew. They decided to follow us at our destination so we could kind of chill during the ride. At our destination, we just sprinted into the next taxi and told him to go to the next city as fast as possible. calling an Uber in Houston right in the middle of a downpour. As a Brit who was staying there for work, I was only vaguely aware of the dangers of flash flooding, and being from a country with no real inclement weather, I obviously didn't take it as seriously as I should have. As Texas natives will no doubt confirm, when it rains hard. At least it did that morning. I remember trying to call an Uber on the app, and a few drivers in a row canceled on me. But I was going home from a friend's house, so I didn't really have much choice, and just persisted in requesting a driver. The driver who eventually did show up was a friendly Nigerian fellow who probably also didn't really consider how dangerous it was. In the short, as in 4 seconds journey from the front door to the cab, I got so soaked it looked like I'd been thrown into a lake. We were both chuckling like, haha, look at all this rain, until it got so bad that we literally couldn't see 1 yard in front of the car. By this point, we were on the freeway and basically trapped, and then we both started getting alerts on the Uber app that we were in a danger zone and to vacate immediately. Then we saw the water rising on the side of the freeway, and cars started to lose control. That's when both of our smiles dropped, and it was like, yeah, people die in these conditions. We both might not be going home today. It probably sounds silly to people who have to deal with that all the time, but that was the only time in my life I've experienced the genuine fear of there's a very real danger that I could either drown or be sleeping in a community center this evening. Eventually, he did get me home, and I've never been so grateful. He got a pretty big tip from me, and a hug. When I was in school and did my psych rotation, the first thing we were told was never to split up from our partner, so just in case of a dangerous situation with a patient, we would have a second person there to help. I went to do an assessment on a patient, seemed perfectly normal, and my partner judged that now would be a good time to use the restroom. The patient and I are having a pleasant as can be conversation. He asks me to look at his drawings, which he hung up proudly on the wall. I oblige. I like art as much as the next gal. I look, they're pretty nice. And then I turn around and find that the second thing we were told never to do, which is to let the patient get between us and the doorway, has happened. And he was not seeming so friendly anymore, which is when I thought to myself, well, darn it, I'm in a pickle now. This man is telling me how he has to get out of here. I have to help him. And I don't even hear what at this point, because I'm realizing how potentially effed I am. But then I realized that I had also done the third thing, which we were told never to do, which was to keep our cell phones on us on the floor. I was just hoping at this point that I could keep this guy talking a little while I called the preceptor to save my dumb ass. My friend was at the same clinical site the following semester, and the preceptor used that as a cautionary tale to emphasize the first 2 rules and get rid of the third one. At my best friend's going away party, drunker than I've ever been before or since, barely able to stand, when the bros collectively decided to pick me up and throw me in the pool. All I could do was grab a nearby screen door with one white-knuckled hand. Host is a big, burly musclehead who had just made sergeant. Stopped them and told them they were idiots. I was too drunk to swim, and I blacked out. I swam from a beach out to a buoy, not even that far, maybe 200 meters from the beach. I'm a strong swimmer, so thought I'd manage it easily. Something about the cold water and current, I don't know. I was really struggling coming back, even with trying to swim horizontal to the beach, etc. Went all lightheaded and felt really tired. Then just started thinking that this was it. I was going to drown, and how stupid it was of me. Floated there for a bit, laughed to myself like a maniac about how stupid I was dying like this. Eventually snapped out of it and started swimming again. Ended up crawling back onto the beach. My partner asked how the sea was, and I just croaked, fine. We were on a patrol in Afghanistan in 2008 when we came under heavy fire. Our fire team took cover behind a low, loose stone mud wall, unable to return any effective suppressing fire. The wall was slowly getting lower and smaller as it was being peppered by small arms fire. We knew that air support was coming, but it felt like we were in some shitty Indiana Jones scene. In those situations, it's the humor that stops you from shitting yourself. Me and my friend were scaling a cliff. He wanted to go around, which would take about an hour. I said we could climb it. Fast forward 10 minutes and I'm hanging off a cliff 30 feet tall and hanging on to dear life with 2 hands. I found the situation quite funny. I was so confident in my ability to climb it, and I lost my footing just as I got to the top. I was holding onto the rock for what felt like forever, most likely less than 2 minutes, until he managed to climb up and pull my ass up there. Was on a school trip to Austria skiing. Guy who didn't like me and repeatedly picked on me came into my room with all his mates and pushed me to a window. I thought it was just a joke until he put a knife to my throat. I instantly stopped laughing. He stared at me for a good 30 seconds and walked out of my room, which didn't have a lock on the door. Didn't sleep that night. First World Trade Center bombing. Ground floor. Explosion knocks me to my knees. Thought 2 subway trains crashed. A couple of seconds later, the second explosion. Knew that this was going to be a problem. Learned years later there was no second explosion. The tower just rang like a bell. It was the building reverberating back the original bomb. Went to work somewhere else not long after that. Was watching Archer on my laptop in college. Had my headphones on, and in the episode there was an alarm going off. After about 3 episodes I finally realized, hey, wait, why can I still hear the alarm? I look up and just see the end of the corridor I was in was completely engulfed in fire, and it was coming at me fast. Best part was, like 40 people just walked by me after the alarm started and let me sit there. Nobody even bothered to warn me. My ex and I broke up after 5 years together. Stupid me got more drunk than I've ever been. Drove to the spot where I proposed to her, rock cliff thing overhanging a reservoir, and made a campfire. It was the middle of winter, and I was sitting there getting more and more drunk and certain I was going to kill myself. I brought my shotgun, fully intent on using it. Well, I stupidly looked over the cliff and drunkenly fell into the freezing winter water while it was pitch black outside. Somehow I got out and back to the fire and quickly realized, oh yeah, it's the winter and I'm soaking wet. This is how people freeze to death. So I made the walk back to my truck, stripped down, blasted the heater, and got more drunk till I passed out. I woke up the next morning naked and feeling like an idiot. I've heard a lot of stories of people getting drunk in the woods during the winter and freezing to death, which made me realize how close to dying I was. It was weird because I wanted to kill myself for weeks and weeks, but I guess I didn't want to go out that way. I don't know. Those were dark times, but I'm glad it happened. To put a long story short, when I was 16, I severely misinterpreted how long a hiking trail was. I discovered it a couple hours before sunset. I'd never hiked it before, so I glanced at the map at the trailhead before setting off. It was essentially a loop with a slash through it, so I wasn't too worried about getting lost. I hiked it for an hour or so. I reached what I thought was the halfway point and sat for a while. When I got up, I decided to hike the rest of the loop instead of going back the way I came. Bad idea. The sun was almost down at that point, and I had to start using my phone as a flashlight. Then I realized that I'm at 15% battery. At that point, the reality set in that I was a 16-year-old girl alone in the woods. No one knew where I was, and I'm about to lose my only light source. As I continued hiking the loop, I start to realize that it's much longer than I initially thought. I started to get frantic and ended up turning around. At this point, my phone dies, and I start thinking to myself, if something happens to me here, they won't find me for days. The rest of the story is essentially just me being terrified in the woods, but I did eventually make it back to my car unscathed. Moral of the story, don't be an idiot and read the trail maps thoroughly if you're going to go hiking right before sunset. Also, charge your damn phone.